me get it fixed up here. I will tell you that I have preached for fewer. But you're here, and I appreciate that very much. One of the good things we do is live stream our services. And I noticed today that Barbara Potter said, I'm watching. So although she couldn't be here, and when she's not here with all of her children, that leaves quite a hole over here. She wanted us to know that she was watching. And so I think that's just a good thing.
I'd like the mom to know, too, that I took very good notes for her because she wasn't here today. So, and then she watched it already, so she didn't even need minutes.
Okay.
I tried to get her some notes.
Yeah. Turn to the book of Philippians, since that's what we're studying. That's where we ought to turn, I think. And I'm going to begin with verse 12 in just a moment. David Roper, in commenting on this section, called it the Christian's job description. I thought that was a pretty good title, and so I've borrowed it. The emphasis here is more on mind, it's more on attitude than it is on methods or goals. As we go through this tonight, you'll notice that he doesn't tell us what works to do. He tells us how to do them. I guess he thinks that we're smart enough to know a good work when we see it. We have Lift coming up. That's our outreach to the community. And that is growing. I'm sure that there are people who say, that's good work. Nobody has to tell you it's a good work. You know that's a good work. John mentioned the boxes that we send to the students. It's a little encouragement, a little pick-me-up. There they are away from home, and finals are coming on, and they get this box of goodies. And they get those because we either donate them or buy them. I think you know that's good work. We have the youth devotional coming up. And they're calling for baked beans and coleslaw and 2-liter drinks and individual bags of chips. Well, I think you know that's a good work. I think you say, you know, I could do that. I could bring something. Can't bring everything, but I can bring something. And I could go on and mention just so many things. You see, that's a good work. You're smart enough to figure that out. It seems that Paul says, now let me tell you how to do those good works. Let me tell you what kind of heart to have. Let me tell you what kind of motive to have. Let me tell you how you're supposed to do that. So that's what follows in Philippians chapter 2, verses 12 through 18. I hope you have a Bible open and you're looking at it and you're able to see these as I go through them. Let me read the passage with you. Philippians 2, beginning at 12. Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you, both to will and to do for his good pleasure. Do all things without complaining and disputing, that you may become blameless and harmless, children of God without fault, in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world, holding fast the word of life, so that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain or labored in vain. Yes, and if I am being poured out as a drink offering on the sacrifice and service of your faith, I am glad and rejoice with you all. For the same reason, you also be glad and rejoice with me. Now we've got a word to begin in verse 12, and that's a connection. Therefore. How many times have you heard me say, when you see a therefore, you need to stop and see what it's there for? It's a connection to what has been said. Paul has encouraged the people to have the mind of Christ, whether he's there or not, to think like he thinks, and therefore to do like he does. And so he builds on that. And he says, therefore. He wanted his readers to be as humble and obedient as Christ was. That's the whole point of having the mind of Christ. It's the humility, and it is not only that, but it's the obedience that follows. Though he was divine, he gave that up and came to earth in the form of a man, a bondservant, humbled himself, became obedient to death, even the death of the cross. Paul says, therefore, you have an example. Now, whether I'm there or not, and he was not there, by the way, he wanted them to serve in the right way. Instead of being idle, he told them to work out their own salvation with fear and trembling. Now, that has given people some cause to pause and wonder. We preach we're not saved by works, and we're not. Ephesians 2, for by grace are you saved through faith, that not of works, lest any man should boast. We're not saved by works of merit. You cannot earn salvation. But we are saved and then expected to work. You cannot be saved without works. You cannot be saved by works. You cannot be saved without works. The works that Paul has in mind are not works of merit. They're not works where we would say, hey, look what I did. I've been a very good Christian. I have lived the right kind of life. I pray, I give, I do all of these things. Therefore, I deserve to be saved. And Paul would say, no, you don't. You cannot earn salvation. There's nothing in the world you can do to earn 1 minute in heaven. It is a free gift of God. Grace is always a free gift. By its very, very nature, grace is a free gift. As a matter of fact, the word charis, that is translated grace, is also translated gift. Undeserved, unmerited. God gives it. And then he says, but I want you to work for me. I want you to have a faith that will work. How do you know a person has faith? Only by works. It's not because they say, hey, I have faith. Well, the devils have a kind of faith, but their works don't demonstrate the right kind of faith. The only way that people who see us know that we have faith is by the works of obedience which we do. So we're not talking about meritorious works. We're talking about works that show our obedience and our faith. Saving faith, obedient faith. It's amazing how many times in the New Testament the idea of good works, works of faith, works of obedience show up. For instance, in 1 Corinthians 15:58, last verse of the chapter, Paul says, therefore be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. What's that, Paul? Abound in the work. Why? It'll come back. It pays off. Your labor is not in vain in the Lord. In Colossians chapter 1 and verse 10, Paul says, be fruitful in every good work. And then in James chapter 2 and verse 24, James says, man is not justified by works, or he is rather justified by works and not by faith only. By the way, here's just a little thing that you might notice, is people who say we're saved by faith only. The only time the word faith only is found in the New Testament is right there. And it says we're not saved by faith only. We're not saved by faith only, but by works. I heard the illustration many times back over the years. I don't hear it anymore. That it's like a man in a rowboat, and he has two oars, and one of them is marked faith, and the other one is marked works. And if he pulls on the oar marked faith, he'll go around in a circle. If he pulls only on the oar marked works, he'll go around in a circle the other way. But when he pulls evenly on both, he makes progress. It is faith working. It is faith being demonstrated. And that's what God wants us to do. That's what Paul is talking about here. Now, he begins to say, here's how you do those works. Let's look first of all in verse 12 in the last part of it. He says, therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Now, how are we to work? With fear and trembling. Does that mean that I must cower over in the corner someplace? Does that mean I must really shake in the presence of the Lord? No. It means that I must be reverent, that I must be respectful. At the end of the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon would say, let me tell you the whole matter, the end of everything. Fear God, keep His commandments. This is the whole of man. Now, in our English versions, it adds duty. This is the whole duty of man. The duty is not in there. It just says, this is the whole of man. Well, Solomon, what's the whole of man? Respecting God and keeping His commandments. We must serve God with deep respect for who He is. I said last week when answering the questions, we must worship God with due respect for who He is. When we pray, we must pray with due respect for who He is. When we talk about Him, we must talk about Him with due respect for who He is. Folks, this is God. This is Jehovah. This is the creator of the universe. This is God Almighty. I need to show proper respect. That means I need not take His name in vain. This, oh God this and oh God that, and I just cringe. I must tell you, I just cringe when I hear that. And yet I hear people who know better, or should know better, say that. Or this OMG. And it's like, what? Am I not smart enough to figure out what that is? I think that we've got people who think I'm smart, not smart enough to look at Facebook and know what the abbreviations mean. And they think they're really slick by using an abbreviation rather than just the term. And it's like, you think I don't know what that means? My sister and I correspond every Thursday. Thursday's our day. And we text back and forth. And she used one of those figures. And I said, I know what that means. And she said, LOL, laugh out loud. And she said, I'm surprised you know. I said, I wasn't raised in a box in a cave somewhere. I know a few things. I know what those letters mean. We must approach God with the greatest of respect. God is to be obeyed with reverence and godly fear. Hebrews 12:28. And so, whatever the work is, whatever the good work is, you remember you're doing that for God. You remember you're serving Him. You remember you are to do that respectfully. I think that we sometimes forget the end game. So, we have some snacks. I would imagine that the Wheelers are going to furnish some hot dogs. And as some of you know, Rusty and I and maybe some others are hot dog aficionados. And so, that's right down our line. And we're going to furnish some baked beans and some coleslaw and some drinks and some chips. Do we get it? Do we get it that we're serving God? Well, those kids are going to eat it. Yes, they are. But those kids are going to be here with other kids. They're going to have opportunities to meet and be with other young people. They're going to come in, and many of them are going to stay and sit down. They're going to have to listen to me. And so, good things can come from some baked beans and some coleslaw and those kind of things. We need to understand the end game. It's like when we give, when we lay by in a store, and we pass these baskets. Well, I put my money in the basket. No. You gave your money for the Lord. That'll go into our treasury. Our elders will decide what good works we can do with that money. Serve God respectfully for who He is. Verse 13. For it is God who works in you, both to will and do, for His good pleasure. Serve God confidently. Folks, do you understand that God works in you and through you? That He does not expect us to do anything that He does not give us the ability and strength to do. He doesn't say, go move this mountain, you're on your own. He said, you serve me, and I'll be with you. One of the more modern speech translations, and I like this, says, God is working in you to make you willing and able to obey Him. God is working in us and through us. Now, here's the point, and here's the hard thing. I don't always know how He does that. I don't know when He does it. It may be through a timely sermon. I have had people who listen to my sermons tell me, that really helped me. That really opened my mind to something. That really helped me understand this point. It may be a word of encouragement from you. It may be something that you say that somebody else says, that means the world to me to hear you say that. I said to somebody this morning who gave me a compliment, I said, that means so much coming from you. It was somebody that I respect greatly. It came from somebody that I know just doesn't say things without thinking. And I said, that means so much coming from you. It may be an answered prayer. It may be that you just prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed, and God answered that prayer. We are better, may I say, at asking God for things than we are for thanking Him when we get them. If we're going to ask God for something, we need to be mindful to thank Him. I thought it was remarkable today, little Teresa Graves. Do you realize that Friday morning she was in Vanderbilt on a table? They were doing surgery for her heart. It wasn't a toenail, it was her heart. And her mother said almost to the minute after they took the anesthesia away, she woke up. And she's been fine ever since. Now, I don't know about you, but I prayed for her. I prayed that God would be with her, that God would bless her parents and her grandparents, and that she would be okay. You know what I'm going to do tonight? I'm going to thank Him for answering that prayer. I'm going to thank Him that He helped her, that He worked through her. It may be an encouraging word from the Scripture. Have you ever read a verse and it's just like, wow, I never got that before? Folks, I've been reading the Bible for 60 years, been preaching for 60 years. There are still times that I read a verse and I'll say, how did I miss that? Why did I not see that before? And it just is new to me. And so may I say, when you work for the Lord, whatever the work is, do so confidently, knowing that it's the Lord's work and He is with you. He will not forsake you. Verse 14. Do all things without complaining and disputing. Well, all service, all work should be without grumbling and complaining. We all have limited time. We say things like, well, I didn't have time to do that. You know what I've observed? We have time to do about whatever we want to do. If we really want to do something, chances are we'll find the time. And so we fuss about it. I tell you, here I am over at the church, but I live over here. I've got so much to do. I just can't get anything done at home. And it's like, okay, please take a breath. Work for the Lord without disputing, without complaining. The greatest privilege we have is to do His will. The greatest privilege you have is to do His will. Therefore, I think that doing His will ought to come first. I may have told you that when I first started preaching, I was still in college, and a couple kind of adopted me. I would go over on Sunday, and they would take me home with them to eat. I'd spend the afternoon there, and I'd go back in the evening, and then back to the college that night. And I just had the greatest respect for them. The man decided to build a new house. And so for the entire time that he built that house, he did not show up for worship. And his excuse was, well, the only time I've got to work on my house is the weekend. And so I've got to do it while I can. And I thought, brother, I wonder if the Lord were to come and you're up there on that roof pounding on something, if He's going to be real happy with you when you ought to be in the Lord's house worshiping Him. We need to work willingly without grumbling and complaining. You want examples? Think of the children of Israel. At every turn, when God complained, or when God gave them something, they complained it wasn't good enough. They complained that they didn't have water to drink, so they got water to drink. They just complained they didn't have anything to eat, so they gave them manna, but that wasn't good enough. They wanted meat, so He gave them quail. And it's just like you couldn't keep up with them because they just complained and fussed. Let's not do that, and I'm thankful that by and large, as a congregation over the years, it's my observation that we have worked together willingly without grumbling and complaining. Verse 15, that you become blameless and harmless, children of God without fault, in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. Work blamelessly, without reproach. If you're going to work for the Lord, do the best job you can. There's no excuse for not doing the best job we can do. There's no reason why we should just throw things together just to get by. You know what the old adage is about churches? Is that we can put more Band-Aids on a thing than you can imagine without stopping to fix it. And so there's something wrong, so we put a Band-Aid on it. That doesn't work, so we put a bigger Band-Aid. And that doesn't work, so we put a bigger Band-Aid. And at the end, we would have saved much money had we fixed it right in the first place. I believe we ought to do our best. We ought to serve Him blamelessly, without reproach. We must not do anything that would bring reproach on the Lord or His church. We are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, so that all may see. Verse 16, holding fast the word of life, so that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain or labored in vain. Work steadfastly, holding fast the word of life, so that I can rejoice. I have not run in vain. Folks, it's always too soon to quit. Always too soon to quit. Don't give up. There's nothing to be gained by giving up. We can think of the analogies that are used. We can think of a runner who stops and doesn't finish the race. We can think of a craftsman who finds his work is flawed and quits. And Paul says, I don't want you to do that. I want you to work steadfastly. He wanted to know that the time and the energy that he had poured into them was not in vain. Paul had done so much on behalf of the Philippians. He wants them to know he was glad to do that. He did that steadfastly, and he wants them to serve in the same way. And then verses 17 and 18. Yes, and I am being poured out as a drink offering on the sacrifice and service of your faith. I am glad and rejoice with you all. For the same reason, you also be glad and rejoice with me. Work cheerfully. Working for the Lord should never be viewed as drudgery. I think this is an intensely personal note on the part of Paul. I've said that Philippians is one of those letters that shows us the heart of Paul. And I think this is an especially dear, sweet, intimate thing that he's saying. He says, I've given my all, and I did it cheerfully. He spoke in the present tense. I am being poured out like a drink offering. You know what that meant? That was a figure that meant he was giving his all. He was giving his life. As libations were poured out on the altar in worship, he says, my life is being poured out on the altar, and it's okay with me. I'm glad to do it. I just want you to know I expect the same out of you. I am glad and rejoice with you all. For the same reason, you also be glad and rejoice with me. Well, there is the Christian's job description. How are we to work? He doesn't tell us a single thing to do. He doesn't say, bring the baked beans. He says, you work reverently. Understand it's God. That you work confidently. Know that He's with you. That you work willingly, not pressed into service. That you work blamelessly. That you don't bring any shame on the Lord and His cause. That you work steadfastly. That you don't give up. And you work cheerfully. Understanding that you are working for the Lord and good will come. I appreciated the song, to the work, to the work.